They stopped at body number, was it 17?
Is that where I ended?
They stopped digging, and you ended it with saying how he was giving candy to the kids, and they were working in the store, and he was basically grooming them to trust him for years.
Oh, yeah,
This candy store was behind the elementary school.
Tell me, how many people have heard of this story before me? I mean, probably everyone. It's a big story.
I mean, I definitely had heard the name Dean Corll.
Yeah.
And I knew that there was the Candyman, but there's also, isn't that a horror movie too? The Candyman?
Yeah.
But it's not related.
No, I don't think so. You do not have to go back and listen before you watch this. If you're watching this right now and you haven't seen the Dean Corll thing, we'll kind of go through it. But I started at the very end where he was killed. Mama, I killed Dean he was killed by his accomplice, Wayne Henley. And I want you to also think about today, because we're going to talk about his role in the murders, and because he's trying to get out of prison right now, a compassionate release. And this is him right here. He's trying, this is from the Texas Observer right y'all. See, that's him now. Wayne Henley Jr., gray-haired 66-year-old, serving 6 life sentences.
Yeah, I feel like if you have that many life sentences, you shouldn't get out in that lifetime. I don't know.
I know, but in today's world, there are a lot of social media people, like TikTok especially, that will go to bat for these serial killers. Like the Menendez brothers, they were...
But why? Can we go to bat for people that actually, haven't killed other people?
Because people are dumb and they follow this sheep mentality. So if someone says, all right, well, Wayne Henley shouldn't be in prison because he was groomed at an early age and he wasn't even the killer. He was just, he had to do it because he was getting forced by Dean Corll. And then everyone, millions of people post this, like, why is Wayne Henley in prison? Da, 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 da. And it just makes him seem innocent. It's the same thing with the Menendez brothers,
which we haven't done.
Yeah, but everyone was calling for them to get released. But I'm going to show you right now. I mean, you're going to see this guy belongs where he's at. The other dude, David Brooks, the accomplice, which we're going to go into him too, he died in 2020 of the RFID. Yeah, COVID. RFID. Oh, shit. So anyway, you don't have to have listened to those. We started with Dean Corll getting killed by his accomplice. And then yesterday was a very exciting episode. It was the bodies in the boat shed. They found 8 bodies the first day in the boat shed. And then at the end, they pulled out 17. Although there are probably a lot more. They're probably still there.
Because they stopped digging. That's good enough. We got what we need here.
I mean, that's exactly what they did. And I'm going to kind of tell you why here in a second.
I don't understand how you can justify that. I really don't.
You can't. You can't. I mean, they should go back now and dig them up.
Yeah, they should. They really should.
But I'm going to kind of tell you their mindset. But this is what we talked about yesterday a little bit, all the bodies there. This is, there were 17 found. But as you see, they didn't look in all these spaces, right? Dean Corll was very efficient. So he lined them up like Tetris. So you can guarantee there's one here, 1 or 2 here, probably one here, one here. As you'll see, they just started throwing all the bones in the same bag, and they're like, they're probably this kid. Which is probably not what you're supposed to do. Anyway, so we're going to get started with today's episode. Somebody asked right before we signed off, literally I signed off, I was thinking about answering the question that I think it was Amanda asked this. You remember I said there were all the kids in there were between 11 and 13, but there was one exception.
Yep.
And it's not a good exception.
Yeah.
So she had asked, well, what's the exception? And I didn't mention that. So I put that in first.
Okay.
First, right here. And the exception there is, as I said, most of the boys found in the boat shed were early teens. However, they did come across one pair of muddy pants that were found in the dirt no longer than 1.5 feet.
Oh, no.
So a boy of the age of 9 or 10. All right.
So a little younger than his typical victim.
Yeah. In fact, this was Dean Corll's neighbor when he lived in an apartment building. As you'll see, Dean Corll moved around a lot until he finally ended up at his dad's old place, right? Mm-hmm. So, and David Brooks would say, quote, the youngest kid Dean killed was about 9. His daddy run a grocery across the street from where Dean was living. That's 9 years old. So, anyway, tell me what you think of Dean Corll's so far. Tell me what you think of this story.
Horrible human being. How's that?
Well, I will say that the mother thinks differently.
Well, it seems like he had a perception of being like a good, citizen. He's giving out free candy.
Well, he was a good citizen.
Yeah, I'm going to say the murders.
Well, the murders are different, but if
they are different, yes.
As you'll see, the mother, Dean Corll's mother, which her name is Mary West, she, up until the day she died in 2010, has been trying to clear her son's name because she thinks her son was framed. She said her son is just misunderstood, and we're gonna talk about that because the mother is in
denial.
Yeah, I will say we've covered a lot of gay serial killers, and the ones I can think of off the bat is Dean Corll. Obviously, we've covered John Wayne Gacy, Jeffrey Dahmer, Bruce McArthur, which is a Canadian serial killer who was also a green thumb. Like a landscaper.
Yeah.
And then another one, one of the good stories we covered, his first name rhymes with Herb.
Herb. Baumeister.
We covered him. He was a businessman. He owned a bunch of like 7-Eleven type stores. Was it 7-Eleven or no, it was like fabric stores, wasn't it? I think it was fabric
I can't remember,
stores.
but I do remember he lived in a mansion and had a big pool.
He had a big pool. He lived in a mansion. Because the
episode was called Herb Pool Party at Herb Baumeister's, I think.
Yeah. I would like to redo that story actually and kind of see what I would do differently in today's, since I'm mature nowadays.
Bob Berdella, yep.
Oh yeah, Bob Berdella. Yeah. But a lot of the gay serial killers we covered would never admit even to themselves that they were gay. And Dean Corll's a little bit different. As you'll see, he accepted it himself, but he would never let his mother know because even after his death and all these kids were unburied, the mother adamantly says before anything, the most important thing is her son was not a homosexual. So.
I mean, it is really interesting to it's the sign of the times where that was so shameful. And I know that there's definitely still that stigma today. But I wonder, had they been in like today's kind of society, would they have that kind of same reaction or same, denial or anger about, I don't know.
So, going back to Wayne, when he finally confessed, and he felt really good after he confessed, almost like a high. And a lot of killers feel this is, that weight off your shoulders.
Yeah.
That weight off your shoulders. Yeah. Quote, "Mama, I told him everything." What do you mean everything? Just everything. "Oh, Wayne, Mama, be happy for me, because now at least I can live." I mean, literally, he sounds just like that. "Mama."
Yeah, I liked the video.
I killed Dean.
Yeah.
"Oh, Wayne." Holy shit. All right, we are going back to the boat shed, and we are reading from the book Man with Candy, and also the book Candy Cards, The Man with Candy by Jack Olson, Candy Cards by Robert Brown. And in the corner of the shed, they found multiple graves.
One by one, the bodies of young men came into sight, most of them in advanced states of decomposition, each wrapped neatly in its own plastic. One had been buried sitting up, two others in the fetal position, one on its back, and many bones were intermingled. Detectives wearing surgical gloves knelt under the fire department floodlights and groped for bits of rotten flesh and crumbling bone, fighting nausea and hoping that they were not mixing up the final remains. Oof.
Yeah, it's pretty bad, isn't it? Most of the bodies were found in the boat shed. We are going to go to the beach. A couple bodies were found at the beach. Now, 29 is the number. One's still unidentified, but there are most likely a lot more out there.
Oh, yeah.
Because
definitely,
as you'll see, even before he met Wayne Henley, he was digging in several different places. So, and we'll talk about that. They had all seen death. Now, this is the diggers and the detectives. They had all seen death, but none had encountered the wholesale transfiguration of roll-licking boys into reeking sacks of carrion. Carrion is decomposing flesh. 8 bodies were uncovered by midnight the first day. By day 2, it was nearly impossible to separate each victim from the next.
We had to reach in with our hands and separate little bitty bits of bone from crushed shell and muck, and then pitch them up into bags. Detective Larry Earl said earlier, we were pulling hair out of the mud in chunks, working in mud made out of dirt and rotten blood. It was caked on our shoes. It got into our clothes. It was awful.
One of the newsmen there at the boathouse, and if you guys, I showed you all the pictures yesterday of the boathouse and the bodies, stuff like that, so we're not going to do that again. But, so go watch that video if you weren't here. But a newsman that was there at the scene, he was observing what was going on. He said, quote, the city sent out a backhoe that just wasn't big enough, and all the work wound up being done by hand. Naturally, the men got a little short on patience, and they kind of jumbled bones around. When they came to graves with more than one body, they just divided the bones into body sacks about equally. I really couldn't blame them. Isn't that crazy? Because you're not supposed to do that.
It's like an excavation.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, okay, there's a body here. Let's put all the parts in this bag. Yeah, because when they got to bury them, so now you're burying a kid with like someone else's bones in it. You know. But
given the fact that they also just stopped at a certain point, kind of doesn't surprise me that they were willing to be that careless.
There's a couple motivations why they stopped. One of the reasons is because of the terrible odor and the conditions of which they were working in. Mm-hmm. There was no ventilation, really. It was a boat shed. They only had that one door. They should have knocked the other wall out. I don't know why they didn't.
Yeah, true. I mean, it's definitely a big enough crime scene.
I know, exactly. And I mean, that's just a boat shed. That's just a what do you call it? Like a sheet metal, I would imagine, on the back. You just knock it out and then staple another piece on there. It would have made things a lot better.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, but they didn't. So that was another reason they stopped. But there was another big reason they stopped as well. And that was because they were getting close to reaching a number of another killer who was the most prolific in Houston at the time. And they did not want to surpass that number because that would be terrible. So they literally stopped.
Oh.
That killer's name is Juan Corona. I haven't done a story, but I just know he killed 25. I believe I saw 25. Yeah. So they didn't want to pass that number. And they knew they
didn't want to be known as having the most prolific serial killer in Texas.
Well, also let's be honest, like all these boys went missing. And if you go back into the police records, they were all just like, they're runaways. They're probably
just kids.
But these were 11-year-olds.
Yeah, that's really young.
You know, and they all ran away, or they all disappeared from the exact same community, the Heights, which is
why have such a high concentration of runaways in that one area.
Yeah, and why didn't the police, catch on?
From the ages of 11 to 13 years old.
But when they go back to the statements, it's all like, your son's he'll be back next summer, I promise.
Yeah.
Now, not every cop is like that, but the thinking in this department was kind of geared towards that way. On day 2, 17 bodies had been unearthed, although there were probably still a lot more in the shed, probably 1 or 2 more in the shed, and probably a lot more outside, especially at the beach. We're going to visit the beach and stuff like that. And they actually used the backhoe in several different spots. So they were lined up. But then they would go 2 blocks down, there'd be some more. And then one place about 50 miles up in a forest, they found some bodies too. Dean Corll, his background, I'm going to kind of run through this kind of quick, but he was born Christmas Eve 1939 in Waynedale, Indiana, which is right outside of Fort Wayne, or it's actually a part of Fort Wayne, the military base, Fort Wayne. His parents, their marriage was pretty stormy, pretty turbulent, but there was no violence. The mother is very adamant, and she kind of says this braggingly, that there was no violence in any of her 5 marriages. There have been no violence. So you see what I did there? Not that it's bad that she's married 5 times, but she did get married 5 times. That's probably
no violence. I mean, hey, spousal abuse is prominent. So I guess, that's pretty good odds.
Dean was the oldest of 2, and they grew up on a farm. So I did too, but I'm not a serial killer.
From Dean's mother, Mary West, from the time he was little, he never went any place to see anybody else. If the kids would come to our place, he'd be nice to them and he'd play with them, but he'd never go to their house seeking them out. I might have had something to do with a birthday party when he was about 6. He had his feelings hurt because he was so little and didn't get a prize. I thought that it bothered him, so whenever birthday parties would come up, I wouldn't make him go. You would never hear him say, could I go to so-and-so's to play? Stanley was always out running with the other kids, but Dean would stay home.
Yeah, Wolfie, I didn't mention that on purpose, but I can't get anything past you. She said she was married twice to Arnold, the father, and that is true. They try to make things work. She actually did that twice with another man too. So I can't get anything past you guys, man. You guys are too good.
Like any small detail that you're like, oh, I can skip this.
No, I wasn't going to skip it. All right, I'm going to be honest. I kind of wanted to make it seem like she was worse than she was. Married 5 times, which she was. She was married 5 times, but she also remarried the same guy.
Twice.
Twice.
But two different men twice.
Yes.
Interesting.
From what I've seen. I don't know. I didn't keep track of all of her
No,
marriages.
don't shut up, Wolfie. It's good.
No, dude, I like that. I just need to know that I can't get anything past you.
And I had the same, Wolfie and Tram both did the one Corona. That's what it, instead of my Sharona, that's exactly what it is.
Oh, I was wondering what the hell you were talking about. So Dean's mother, her name is Mary West, and that was
like Fred and Rose West. Yes, I know. I can't not think about it.
Right?
Yeah.
I thought about that the whole time.
Any relation?
No. At 7 years old, Dean Corll suffered rheumatic fever, and a lot of killers do have some kind of childhood sickness like this, and it kind of did affect him. Not only that, he was discovered with a heart murmur, and that made him not be able to exercise or partake in any physical activity. He couldn't even play baseball. He couldn't do anything.
Okay.
He couldn't do anything strenuous at all, even like swimming, going to the beach.
He was left out of a lot of things.
Well, yes and no. He was left out, but he didn't really mind. He was a loner, as you're going to see, and he wasn't bullied or anything, and he was attractive. Like, he had a lot of women suitors, but he just rather have been alone, and that suited him. So he wasn't really too upset when he found out that he couldn't run and play with the other kids, because he wasn't doing that anyway.
Okay.
He did join the band and play trombone for a while, but that wasn't really physical. That was just so, and he did okay in that. So he was well liked, like I said, but he was just an outcast. He was a worrier. Now, he was a good kid, not a great kid, but a decent kid. And he did respect others, and he worried about everyone else's well-being. Mm-hmm. He was the guy that would give up his seat at the lunchroom for someone. Like, he was a good kid, a really good kid, so what happened here,
Great question.
A note about the mother real quick. On the day that the news broke until her death in 2010, Mary West was adamant that her son was innocent in everything, that either he was getting framed, or David Brooks and Wayne Henley were just pinning all this on him, and he actually tried to move away. As you'll see, like right before this happened, he was about to move to Colorado. He was trying to get away from these bad influences, these killers. Mm-hmm. The mother was really adamant about that. That this whole thing, they're just dragging her son's name through the mud. It couldn't be him. He's not even homosexual. I will point out that the mother is also kind of a religious fanatic, and she belonged to the Church of Religious Science, which we had a roommate that remember the Church of Science is Church of Science, Religious Science.
Who knows?
Oh. Anyway, so she belonged to that, and she, for instance, when the news broke, she contacted a psychic, who the psychic told her that her son is innocent. It's
well, if Miss Cleo says. Then it must be true. Her intuitions confirmed, the resolute woman began a fight to clear her son's name, starting with the open letter to Henley and Brooks. It burns me up that the newspapers are publishing stories about 27 dead boys, and they don't say 28, she exclaimed. Dean was killed too, but they don't count him. It's not 27 boy deal, it's 28 boy deal. I'm gonna slap a suit on the paper someday. I can't wait till the front page in Houston says Mary West sues TV stations and papers for $100,000 apiece.
Maybe she's on to something. I mean,
I'm going to say no.
At the end of the day, we'll actually never know, because
Because Dean has been killed.
Dean has been killed. Dean can't defend himself. Literally 99% of the people that knew Dean had nothing but good things to say. Mm-hmm. The community loved Dean.
Wait, but that's we not true, because there were survivors from the night that Dean was killed. So we do have more like survivors from the night.
Rhonda Williams.
Rhonda, yes.
And then Ben Caroley. Yeah.
Exactly. So like, had there be no survivors, period, to his torture techniques and all that stuff, there may be a sliver of possibility. But sorry, that takes it right out.
Yeah.
Sorry, mama.
She called on another clairvoyant, and this clairvoyant said that yes, her son was involved, but he had, quote, been used by others, end quote. Now Dean was twice these boys' ages. Mm-hmm. At the time he died, he was 36, I believe, somewhere around there. And, these boys were 18.
Yeah.
So, and this clairvoyant, I will mention, decided that her son has been used because, and this was a tarot card type of reading, where she examined the date and hour of Dean Corll's birth and then flipped over a tarot card, and it, however that works. Now, I do want to say, I've never mentioned this, but there's a lot of people out there, a lot of true crime fans that believe in the psychic thing. I need to mention this again. I need to mention this. Just listen to me. Okay. Every once in a while, a psychic gets it right, but I'm freaking telling you, on every one of these episodes we cover, they always go the psychic route, and they're always wrong. I just don't mention it because I just don't think it's important. Police do it still today. They always do it. The psychics usually call in and, okay, yeah, I can help you. I just need more money, or I need
publicity.
Money. But they're never right. They're right sometimes, but like the majority of them are not. So I just want to get that out of the way, because a lot of people think that psychics, solve cases, and that's just not true.
Slim.
Yeah. Sorry, I hope I didn't offend any psychics or witches.
Well, V says they got a psychic. Damn, I didn't see that coming. But
also, can you go to a psychic and, like, if you go to a tarot reader, do you even have to introduce yourself? Because shouldn't they know that you're coming? You just stand there and just expect to be, Well, I don't know. I don't know how that works. Maybe we should get into it. All right. Another psychic said to the mother, quote, he couldn't possibly have done it. He couldn't have even been homosexual. Another psychic told Mrs. West that Dean's only involvement in the case was that he knew something he didn't tell soon enough.
Hey, Katie and Christopher, long time no see.
Oh, what's up, guys?
Did you already get married? How's the wedding plans?
Oh, shit. Yeah, it's been a while.
Fill us in. All one want to do now is...
No, sorry. I put one instead of I.
Yes, you did. All I want to do now is prove him innocent, she said. I don't even care if they get me. It doesn't mean that much. I'm not afraid to die. If people knew the whole story of Dean's life, they would be absolutely sure that Dean is no killer.
Maybe she's on to something.
Again, no.
I can't even stick up for her. Like, at this point, it's kind of sad. When Dean was young, the father got divorced, and she had married a traveling salesman at one point. Mm-hmm. But Dean, born in, Indiana? Mm-hmm. Indiana, Fort Wayne. Mm-hmm. He moved to Vidor, Texas. Have you heard of that? Let's actually look this up. I'm really interested in this city. Vidor, Texas is the home of the Imperial Wizard.
Like of Oz?
That's what I thought. No, of the KKK.
Oh, God.
And
oh, geez.
Yeah. So I was interested in that because, apparently, and here it is right here. If you see Vidor, Texas, small little town. The town now has 10,000 people from a 2021 census. 10,000 people.
Okay.
And all right, the Imperial Wizard, which is such a dumb name. I mean, it's like Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't know that was what he was called. I thought he was called like the Grand Master or something. Anyway, we're talking about the Ku Klux Klan, which we soon learned it was not the Ku Klux Klan, like I've been saying for all these years. It's the Ku Klux Klan. Anyway, this is where the Imperial Wizard lived. So obviously this town is still, pretty, they still have these ideologies, right? So out of 10,000 people, how many African-American people do you think live in this town now?
None?
7.
Oy.
7. So I was just really interested. I wanted to see it.
I would not want to be anywhere near that place.
because I know, right? And apparently they still have a lot of the same feelings on things, if you know what I mean.
Jeez.
Yeah. Well, this is just the interstate. Let me see. I mean, isn't that bad?
Yeah. That's pretty sad. You know?
I mean, if someone lives there, they may not be able to help it. And I'm not saying it's a bad place, but I mean,
Crazy.
So anyway, Dean went here to high school, this Vidor High School right here. But he, despite going to probably the most racist city in America, I would imagine.
Brittany would like to remind you that in Vidor, Texas is also where her case request is from, Kathy Page.
Okay, nice. Is it related to?
I don't know, but she would just like to remind you as a friendly plug. Maybe you need to write that on a sticky note.
I'm not saying that's a bad, like everyone's bad there, but that's just where the Grand Master was born, the Imperial Wizard. Anyway,
crazy.
So, but the reason I'm saying that is Dean Corll never adopted any racial hatred or anything. I didn't see any of that anywhere. So he just never really cared about that or never adopted it. Dean was an okay student, nothing special, no high marks or anything. He got in high school and he got out. Actually, he was held back 1 year because he failed, I believe, a grammar or English school because he failed English class. He was held back, but he was pretty well liked. He was actually featured in the yearbook, even though he was held back that year. Mm-hmm. And he was well liked. And one of the things that really helped his popularity was the fact that, he started giving out candy. And we're going to talk about the candy shop right here. All right. So the mother started making candy and she was always sort of a chef. She would always cook for the kids and she would always make sweet treats. And they loved it. Mm-hmm. And her neighbors loved it. So one day, what do you say? Pecan or pecan? Pecan. Yeah, that's what I say too.
Pecan.
That's what you say, pecan?
Pecan pie.
All right, because I don't say that pecan stuff. That's some Yankee stuff. So one time, this old pecan salesman, one day when he was a kid, this pecan salesman came by trying to sell his pecans and noticed several cooling pies, apple pies, on the windowsill. Several. And I don't know if he had a taste or whatever, but he did remark to Miss West. She was married at the time to a guy named Jake West. Miss West, he did suggest that Miss West maybe think about doing this full time. And she latched onto that idea because she knew she was good.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. She knew the pie market wouldn't make it. So what she did was she drove up to Houston and she paid $50. She went to a chocolate factory that was in Houston. What? What's so funny? What?
Shram said, has anyone had or made potato candy? Looks deceptive. And Daniel's response was, isn't that what Russians call vodka? That's awesome.
Oh, dude, I have a great Russian episode, if y'all heard it.
We have a few Russian episodes.
The Stas Reflay case.
There's quite a few good ones. Yeah.
You remember the live streamer?
Is that, the trash
streamer. That one pissed you off, especially at the very end. Yeah. So that one, you guys can listen to that one. What do you guys like, man? Do you guys like these serial killer ones, or what do you guys want to hear?
I like that we have like kind of different kinds of stuff. I like that it's not just serial killers,
Mary West, the mother, drives to Houston, Texas. She visits a candy shop that I don't think was no longer in business when she started her own, and probably the reason they sold her the candy recipe anyway. But she paid them $50 for a praline recipe. What's a praline?
Isn't it like a candy sugar coated nut? Is it a pecan actually?
Oh no, I thought it was like a cherry.
No.
Let's look it up. And this shit is gonna make me want some chocolate, man.
Yeah, y'all are making me hungry.
Who? They're talking about
caramelized, sugar heated, combined with a roasted nut combination.
Oh man, dude, these look great.
Usually almonds, pecans, hazelnuts, and sugar.
Wait, you said almonds?
Almonds, pecans, hazelnuts.
See, no one makes fun of when you say things wrong. It's
almonds?
Almonds. Almonds?
Almonds?
You said almonds.
Yeah.
It's almonds. Whatever, dude. I ain't got to press you.
Correct.
All right, so if anyone can... All right, I've been looking for this. I would, if you're a true crime collector, you should as well. But we've been watching American Pickers, and I want one of those Corll Candy Company signs. I know they're out there somewhere, or like a flyer or something.
Yeah,
how cool would that be? But I will say that wasn't the first name of the company. Okay, so if you're a real true crime,
what was the name of the candy company before it was Corll Candy?
It was called Pecan Prince.
Oh,
So if you find a flyer or a sign that says Pecan Prince, grab that shit up.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's not too far from some of our listeners, so.
I know. Dude, if someone can find me, all right, I'm going to be honest. If someone can find me an actual signage used or something and is real from the Candy Corll company, I'll buy it, at a good price, literally, because I want it. Just like I had that freaking the skateboard with the dude's head right there.
Yeah, John will just say, buy this for me as a present, and I will.
I know. I have a lot of cool true crime things, rare things. She drives to Houston and she gets a praline recipe.
I remember the machines coming in, a high school friend said, and putting them in the garage for separating and cracking different sized pecans, shaking them, cleaning them, all by machine. And Dean kept those machines running, wrapped the candy in boxes, and delivered them. That's one reason he didn't have a whole lot of social life. He was busy all the time.
Like I said, he wasn't hated, and he was a really nice kid. He would do anything for you. He would give you his shirt off his back. You know that saying? He would literally do anything. And not only that, he brought all these kids candy. Every day in school, he would bring everyone candy, free candy, I mean, he was a great kid. Everyone loved him. The mother trademarked the name Pecan Prince candies, and that's what they went with at first. But that's kind of a closed market. I mean, now you're only
just pecans,
pecans, what I'm saying?
Gotta broaden it.
Yeah. But initially, this worked out great because the husband at the time, Jake West, was a traveling clock salesman, like door to door, hey, Miss whoever, would you like to see my clock? I have a big clock. So as a traveling salesman, he could bring these candies with him and say, here's some candy for your clock. Here's some candy. Would you like to buy some candy? So it worked out really well. However, the mother, just like her other marriages, there was a confliction of ideas, is what she would say. The marriages never were violent, but they just never got along. She never married the right person. They always had these different ideas on how to, like, for instance, raise kids and stuff like that. Like Arnold, the real father, was strict. He wouldn't beat the kids, but he was real strict. And the mother was, no, he's fine, kind of laughing when they do something instead of scolding them. So at this point, the mother and the husband, there's some tension brewing here. Plus, Dean Corll hated the stepfather, which happens a lot. So there was some tension brewing. Now, this candy company is getting pretty popular and pretty big. They're pretty successful right off the bat. So eventually, the husband would, quit his job, and everyone's working at the candy company full time because they're making good money. I mean, it was a success right off the bat. You know. Now, when Dean turned 18 years old, he was eligible for the draft, and he was drafted into the Army. However, he was let go at 11 months in, not because of anything bad, but that's because and I've seen this before when I was in the Army too, and it happens usually in basic training. And basic training, I believe, is 6 months, 3 months. I don't know, 6 or 3 months. And then you go to this thing called advanced individual training, which he was going to be a radio operator. So that's where he was at most likely when he got the notice that he was getting kicked out of the military. Honorably, but just because the family needed him back at the candy shop, which I've seen that happen before, like a family business, and you would be in basic with one guy and then he would get ripped out and be like, oh, you're needed back home for this, that, and the other, or a family death or something, and they just end the contract. So that's what happened.
Okay.
So he was only in the Army for literally 10 to 11 months.
Okay.
And the mother actually did that. She actually goes to the Red Cross and requests him, because at that point, Dean, his life was candy. And not only that, he was a one-man shop. He was the Candy Corll company. He knew everything, because, I mean, this was when he was a kid when they started it, when he was like 10. And now he's 18 and he's been doing this for this long. It's all he knows. And he was so efficient. He could do every task, and he knew the secret recipes like by heart. He was the candy company. And not only that, he was the one that made it real popular, because he's the guy that would spread all the broken candy to the kids. And, they'll bring the candy home. Well, where'd you get that? It's freaking delicious. Oh, the Corll Candy Company, Dean. So that's a great marketing technique, literally. So he was the business. So they pulled him right out of the Army.
Interesting.
Yeah. But, however, and we're going to get back to some murder here in a second, but, however, something very interesting did happen in the short time he was in the military. Do you want to take a guess what that was?
What?
You want to take a guess? No. He always knew that he was gay.
Okay.
And it never affected him like it did Jeffrey Dahmer. Like, Jeffrey Dahmer goes on a 2-year hiatus this where he's like, I'm not gay, I'm straight type of thing. I'm just not going to have sex with anyone. Like, it really affected him at a personal religious level. Dean Corll, on the other hand, he didn't accept it, but the only reason it took him until the army to actually come out was because of the mother. The mother, even now, says adamantly, above all, my son's not a homosexual. So, you know.
Over being a serial killer.
Yeah, she's more concerned about that. It's crazy.
That was crazy.
Yeah. But his first gay experience happened in the military. Now, no one knows what it is, but it is believed that that's when whatever happened. And that's when he finally kind of came out. But he never really came out, you know, because the mother.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Years later, a close friend, and he's the one that made the theory about him coming out in the army. Quote, he told me that that's where it started. And I'm reading this verbatim, exactly how it's written. Okay.
Okay.
A friend said, quote, he told me that's where it started when, you know, the first time he ever turned to a fag, really. I guess that's the only way I can say it. And ever since then, I guess it just got worse and worse and worse. So you see kind of the way they talked about the homosexuals at the time. So sorry, I didn't mean to offend anyone. That's not my intention. It was more of trying to show you how people thought of the gay population. Now, he came back and he wasn't a part of the homosexual community, which did exist. He did go to bathhouses at some point, but he would complain that they were dirty, so he just kind of stayed away from them. There is a guy that did a radio interview after he was killed that came out, and he didn't give his name, just that his name was Guy. But he says that Dean met him in this supermarket bathroom, and they went out on dates and everything, and nothing but nice things to say. He was very sweet. He liked to cuddle. He wouldn't force anything on me. But he did mention one thing. When this man went to his house, you know, at 2020 Lamar, there was one room that was kind of shut off, and Dean wouldn't let him go in there. And that was presumably the torture room. Yeah. So. And one more thing about him being gay, and this is interesting to note because of the mother, right? Because this story, I really do believe Dean, his personality comes from the mother. Because the mother was kind of eccentric. But for up until he got out of the military till the time he died, he's been going back and forth between marrying a woman named Betty Hawkins, right? Like Stranger Things Hawkins. Now, this woman who had kids of her own, she was a divorcee, she really wanted to marry Dean. She didn't know he was gay. Like, people just assumed that he was asexual. I mean, before he started, you know, acting, you know, more gay or whatever, more... Like
outward,
Well, he started like flirty... being flirty with the kids and stuff. Yeah, but she never realized that he was actually gay. And many times she actually proposed to him, oh, let's get married. Let's do this, that, and the other. And it never really happened. But I think he was just doing that to appease his mother, you know?
Yeah,
so,
I get that.
Because he was an attractive guy. I showed you a photo of him. He was a good looking dude.
cutedeadguys.com, apparently.
So he had a lot of women interest. Even when he came back from the military, now he's all strong and stuff. And all the workers, the female workers were just, you know, just,
had a little thing for him.
Dean, he's so strong. They were, but he never showed any interest, you know?
Yeah.
And the mother just simply said, he wasn't
interested in
he was just busy. The mother, like I said, was more concerned about his sexual preference than anything, would never admit to herself that her son may be gay. So one can really wonder what was going through the mother's mind when they pulled up the bodies. Because the bodies were male. They were male boys, okay?
Mary West would later say about her son, he was disinterested in sex in any way, shape, or form. He might have had his moments. He might have been with a boy. I don't know. But that doesn't make him a homosexual.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's important because the reason that's important is because they pulled up 30 boys.
Right.
Like, obviously he's gay, you know?
Yeah, he's got a preference.
So what was going through the mother's mind when they pulled him up? Oh, no, this isn't my son. Yeah, he may have been with a boy, but he's not homosexual.
How could Dean's mother, adamant her son was straight, ever cope with the descriptions of some of the victims? Not only were they all male, but some of them had been sexually ravaged, and in many cases being a direct cause of the death. One boy's heavily decomposed body lay by a small plastic bag. Sealed inside were his severed penis and testicles, still freshly preserved.
So this is a different side of Dean. Dean actually, in the candy shop, there was a lot of stress. It's a lot of operations going on. And at this point, the mother and the new husband, Jake West, they split for good. And he is trying to tear the mother's company apart. He actually takes the Pecan Prince name and literally starts his own candy company. Now, they eventually get divorced, but this is all going on while they're still married.
That's ugly.
And he is trying to directly ruin her and her company. And Dean's in the middle of this and everything else, you know? And it got really ugly. And this guy, Jake West, he was doing some very hateful things. You know, he would...
Yeah, sounds like it.
Very hateful things. He would, write these letters to everyone in the community, spreading all these lies and stuff. It was very stressful. So what I'm saying is Dean had this room that the employees called the, quote, pouting room. And that's where Dean would go. It was just a little sealed off closet. And he would express himself by saying like, no, not like that.
What else am I supposed to think?
Shit. Some candy, some wine, a janitor's closet.
I mean...
He would go in there and just let it all blow up. Let it all... He would just go and blow his top all over the walls, and it was all sticky.
Stop it!
He would go in there and just scream at the top of his lungs, and everyone could hear him. That's why they call it the pouting room. And he kind of pretended no one could hear him. But he would just go in there and break things, and just... That was his way of... What I'm trying to say is he had a temper issue. Problem.
Yeah, okay.
And especially with the stress. So, taking those two things together, and what Nicole just read, where they literally uncovered a boy's body. Next to the body was a plastic bag containing this boy's penis and testicles. Okay. And then she also read that Dean Corll, this wasn't after death. This wasn't a Jeffrey Dahmer, let me make a shrine of his penis. This is how he expressed himself through torture.
Okay.
Okay. If you want to believe he was involved in all this.
I do. Yes. Because again, we have some living survivors of his torture.
Yeah, that's true. So, as I said, 17 came out of the boat shed. One more quick thing about the operation being shut down for good. And this is one of the reasons, right? I mean, now you're finding balls and penises in bags. I mean, you're like, let's just call it. I'm done. I can't do it.
Again, though, you're still not bringing justice to the rest of the families who may have had children as victims.
But think about it. This is the exact same as remember Dorothy Hilligeist, the one we talked about yesterday? He went to the pool. Yep. Her son goes to the pool. She goes to the police. Oh, he's a runaway.
No, I know. It's not right.
It's the same attitude.
Yeah.
It's whatever.
I get the attitude. I'm not saying it's the wrong attitude.
No, I know. But when you're pulling out penises and bags, eventually the lieutenant's
that's part of the fucking job.
I'm just saying, man. I'm just saying.
Like, sometimes you got to do hard things in your job. It's like part of it,
Yeah.
The operation was shut down for good to the chagrin of at least one officer. Just wasn't done right, he said. We waited out there all day for good equipment, but the city of Houston is so slow. We should have gone down about 6 feet and taken every bit of dirt out, but we couldn't do it by hand, so we just gave up. There's still bodies in that shed, I'm sure of it.
Go back to the one you just read about the penis found in the bag.
Okay.
Now, none of the victims, this might blow your mind, none of the victims that Dean has killed had any stab wounds inflicted on them. Let me put it simply. Dean Corll never had or used a knife in anything. You're finding a boy's severed penis and balls in a bag. How did they get there? No boys were stabbed. No boys were cut. And this has happened to multiple victims. Most of them were tied with a Venetian blind. That's just to kill them if they're not dead already from having their penises cut off. I shouldn't say cut. In fact, the next body that was pulled out right after that said the following. The boy's penis was, quote, gnawed nearly in two, end quote. Gnawed.
Stop!
I mean, I'm just saying.
Okay, I get it.
That's fucking terrible.
Yeah. Welcome to talk murder to me.
Several of them were shot. Their hands were tied behind their backs if they didn't die from the torture. One had a, quote, caved in chest, end quote. And that was from him being kicked to death. This was an 11-year-old boy kicked to death.
Oh my God.
Kicked to death. I like to kick someone to death. I mean, holy shit. Like, that is crazy, right? To kick somebody to death. That's hard to kill someone like that, kicking them to death.
Yeah. Yeah, it's bad.
One body was still intact, wearing a striped swimsuit, undershorts, and black cowboy boots. This was David Hilligeist. So going back to the candy shop, it was thriving at this point. They partnered with this girl named Ruby Jenkins and her husband, and she's known as the Candy Apple Lady.
He was a regular Pied Piper, Ruby Jenkins said, laughing. Everybody told him to stop, but he wouldn't stop. The principal even called and said, please don't encourage the kids. They're crossing the street to get the candy, and they're just little bitty kids. The parents are complaining, but Dean still give it out.
So we talked about like these kids. These are the kids that he would fill their pockets with when he was, working at the candy company, and they were in elementary school, and now they're under the boat shed. So Dean loved kids. I never saw a man that loved kids like Dean. They were always around him, hugging on him, and he just loved it. Now things were going good with the candy company until the ex-husband started doing his vindictive campaigning to try to take him out of business. But at the same time, Dean was filling the pockets with candy, and he also did something that Gacy did at one point. He put a pool table in the back, so the kids.
It was like a hangout spot for them.
Exactly, right.
I bet the dentists in town love Dean.
Yeah. Dean bought the van, and he would pile these little kids in the van and take them to the beach and give candy out. It was really Michael Jackson-y what he was doing.
Yeah.
And people started noticing. However, no one put it together that he could be the reason that all these Heights boys are missing. No one ever put that together because the candy man was so sweet, it couldn't be him.
Pun intended.
Several workers noticed that Dean was getting, quote, flirty with the younger crowd. We're talking about 9, 10, 11. And he would be pinching them when they walked by. Inappropriate, obviously.
Yeah.
He would also be literally stuffing their pockets with candy. So he would
put his hands
down their pants. Yeah. And the mother, of course, was completely oblivious to everything.
He had a lot of young friends, Mary West said. They latched on to him. He didn't look for them. One would bring another one. He would let them use his tape player, teach them how to use it, let them come in anytime they wanted, make them feel at home.
At this time, when the candy company is still going strong, he's sticking all this candy in these pockets, little boys, and he meets this boy named David Brooks. Now, here's his accomplice. However, he doesn't meet David Brooks until David Brooks is in the 6th grade. How old are you? Are you in the 6th grade? Like 9?
Like 11.
Oh, really? I thought it was younger than that.
No.
So he meets David Brooks, which is... It's hard to describe these kids because if you look at the police reports, they're all dopers and this, that, and the other. But that's not true. A lot of them do come from broken homes, but they're not all bad. David Hilligeist wasn't
not a bad kid. Yeah.
Not a bad kid. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like the police are kind of.
They just assumed that everyone was, if they were disappearing, they were into bad things or something.
He meets David Brooks when David is in the 6th grade, and for the next episode, I was going to do it on this one, but it's getting kind of long. I want to read his confession. He has 2 confessions, and David Brooks blames a lot of it on Wayne Henley. David Brooks, kept it on the record that he was never involved in the killings.
Okay.
And David Brooks is dead now, so he ain't getting out. But Wayne Henley may get out. So that's what I'm also trying to, we don't want, or do we?
I don't know. We haven't talked about him.
I know, but anyway, in 6th grade, he meets David Brooks when Brooks is in 6th grade, and he starts coming on to Brooks, and Brooks doesn't really understand everything that's happening, but he does understand cold hard cash. And even though it's $5 to $10, it's paying him not to do anything to Dean, but to give David Brooks something. So he is performing oral sex on these kids. And it's very important because Dean never asked anyone to do things to him. He's always doing things to someone. So he is paying, he would pay David Brooks $5 to $10 to have, quote, oral sodomy with him. That's what he called it, oral sodomy.
With someone else?
No, with David Brooks.
Okay.
Yeah. So he would, when they first met, he would pay him $5. Here, just let me, suck you or whatever. And he didn't really understand what that meant. He's in the 6th grade. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So he's just like, okay, $5 is $5.
He liked oral sex, the boy said, and he'd pay boys to come over and let him do it to them. That was his sex life. There were some boys that were involved with him for a long time. They kept coming back for more, and he kept paying them. But every once in a while, he'd take a kid by force, and he'd do oral sex and rectal sex and all kinds of things, and he'd wind up killing him.
That's important because...
So he would lose control.
Boom. That's the point. He would lose control. So, I know, right? So is he really that bad? I shouldn't say that. But
yes, he's really that bad.
I know. I'm just saying that he would lose control. I told you about the pouting room and everything else.
Yeah.
He would go too far. And then that's why, that's where you're seeing this. Because you just read a lot of boys kept coming back and loved him. I talked about the one guy from the supermarket that did the radio interview. He loved hanging out with Dean. Loved it. He was the nicest person ever. But sometimes when the boys on the torture board and stuff like that, or this, that, and the other, and Dean's having a bad day, he would lose control and things
got out of hand.
Exactly. So that is what happened.
It was always Dean doing something to me, never me doing nothing to Dean, David emphasized, drawing a distinction that was apparently important to him.
Dean Corll had a sadistic side, okay, which we're going to talk about, some glass tubes and stuff, but which David would later be the one to provide the information with. But to start it, the first real killings that David witnessed, okay, and now David never participated in the killings. I think we read last time how Wayne choked the victims, or maybe not, but it's really hard to kill someone choking them, even a kid. Okay, David never did that according to him. But one time, quote, I come home and Dean had two little old boys tied to a board in the living room. 1 second, David was also living with Dean at this point. David was the permanent roommate, basically. David didn't have a job. He was living off Dean. Dean was supporting David at this point. He moved out of his house and moved in with Dean. He was groomed, basically. Yeah. Yeah. So let me start over. Quote, I come home and Dean had two little old boys tied to a board in the living room, and they was all three of them naked, he said. Quote, Dean jumped up and said, I'm just having some fun. And he promised me a car if I kept quiet, end quote. He bought David Brooks a Camaro for his silence. That's kind of fucked up. Wow. David came out and said that Corll had a sadistic side. I told you about him gnawing off penises, but he also did some other things. Sometimes boys were tortured by glass tubes being inserted into their body openings, including the penis area if he had a tube that small. At this time, Mary West's ex-husband, is on this vindictive campaign, so the company is suffering. The candy company eventually closes down in 1968. Things are getting stressful. Dean takes a part-time job at the Houston Power and Lighting Company, where he has access to things like acrylic paint and glass tubes. He was actually a relay tester, so he literally worked with these glass tubes. So he would take them home, he would steal them, and insert the bigger ones into the anus or orifices, and then the smaller ones into, once these glass tubes were inserted into the orifices deep enough where he thought, okay, this is deep enough, he would then break those tubes. So like he would kick it like with his boot or whatever, just kick the top of it and it would shatter inside the boy. So a lot of them died like this, right? I mean, it reminds me of Junko Furuta, where they put the light bulb. Yeah. Put the light bulb in her.
Yeah. Oh dear.
So that was pretty bad. The glass tubes. He also had this one thing that he loved to do is he would, now these are boys, 10 to 12. He would like to pull the pubic hairs out one by one. And remember, he's not using a knife or tweezers or anything. He's using his mouth. He's doing all this. He's doing all this with his mouth.
This is really making me painful.
Making you painful? You ain't got a penis?
I know, but like just this. Yeah, I'm feeling secondhand pain right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So Wolfie says literally shattered them. I mean, he would insert them, and I mean, glass tubes. They're from the power company. So what I just showed you is probably what he had. There's no one that I saw a picture of, but he would insert them in every different orifice, including the penis, and then just stomp them. I guess
we got it.
I'm just saying. He would stomp them or break them somehow. They would all get broken up. And they found the glass, like shards of glass in the... This is what David says.
Once they went on the board, they were as good as dead, the young man said. It was all over but the shouting and the crying.
All right, so we'll be back in 2 hours. I'll set the video up now and release it, but it will have the countdown for 2 hours from now. All right. And this is before the unlisted Talk to Us Primos, because this is what you guys pay for. So we'll finish it up, I swear to God.
All right. Sounds good.
Yep. And so that is part, I don't know, fuck. That is another...
There's a lot of parts in this one.
That is another part of the Dean Corll one. I hope you enjoyed it. We got one more coming up, and I swear I'm done. And that's all I got. So let's get out of here.
All right.
For another 2 hours.
All right. We'll be back.
All right. We'll be back. So until next time, good night, you lovely, lovely people.